morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my dear friends and colleagues from the insurance industry. My name is Ariel Rivera, and I am your host of Fun Insurance Solutions. Today, we have a wonderful episode. But you know what? Today is also March 1st. So today we celebrate the beginning of the Women's History Month. And our guest is one of the top leaders in the insurance industry, and she is amazing. Today you're going to meet the great Clare DeNicola, who is the principal of the 10th Company, which is a highly strategic, service-oriented, woman-owned business dedicated to helping C-level executives transform their businesses using marketing, sales, and communication. And Claire also was the past president and CEO of Ivans. Yes, people, Ivans, the company that we all use for downloads to our agency management system. So you're going to learn a lot about Claire, and you're going to have plenty of fun. Before we begin, I want to give a huge shout out to Back9 Insurance Services. Listen, if you have not signed up with Back9, which is free, by the way, you need to go to our LinkedIn page, our Facebook page. We provide you with a link for you to sign up. Back9 Insurance, it's an insurtech that provides you and your clients an easy platform for you to quote and apply for life insurance in seconds. Back9 Insurance is available in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. So go sign up. It's completely free, and I'm sure it's going to help you take your career to the next level. Let's go have some fun. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my dear friends and colleagues from the insurance industry. My name is Ariel Rivera, and I am your host of Fun Insurance Solutions. Today, we have a super special episode with somebody I admire, somebody I appreciate, and I have the utmost respect for her. She is the past president and CEO of Ivans. Yes, people, Ivans, the download company. And she is currently the principal and the owner of the 10 Company, which is a highly strategic, service-oriented, woman-owned business dedicated to help C-level executives transform their businesses using marketing, sales, and communications. They currently work with Fortune 500 companies as well as emerging technology companies in the insurtech and the healthcare space. She also works with the National Association of Professional Insurance Agents as a consultant as well, where she works directly with the PIA partnership, which the partnership, just so you guys know, it's a joint effort of the leading insurance companies, some of the leading insurance companies in the country, where basically they work directly with PIA National and with Clare as well. And one of the things I love the most about the partnership is everybody leaves their egos at the door. We all sit down, we work, we collaborate, and we all want what is best for the industry and the consumer and every independent agent across the country. So without further introduction, I give you the one and only Clare DeNicola. Claire, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ariel. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate.
Thank you. By the way, did I say your last name right, DeNicola?
You said it exactly right. Yes.
Okay, perfect. I always get a little bit afraid about that. So yeah, Claire, I'm super honored to have you in the podcast. And, I always love to start the podcast with just a simple question. And I think I know the answer because you and I have spent some time together. It's Friday. You had a good time. You had a great week. Everything went well. All the C-level guys and women that you advise, have done exactly what you have told them to do. It's been a perfect week. You want to sit down, enjoy a Friday night. What will be your cocktail or drink of preference? There's no right or wrong. It could be either water, juice, coffee, wine, whatever you do.
Well, let's see. So let me take you back to what would be a perfect night. Let's talk about this Friday. I was actually in Vegas with my partner, and we had just done a training. And we'll talk a little bit about that training because the training was about women and risk taking. We had just done a training, and it went really well. And we went out. It was Mandalay Bay. So we're in the insurance industry. We're kind of familiar with Mandalay Bay. I've been to a ton of conferences there. And we went to the S Bar, which I think they bill themselves as like cocktails with art, or the art of the cocktail, I think is their theme. And we went in and I ordered, and I don't always order a fancy cocktail, but I ordered one off the menu, and it was the blood orange and basil, which was made with gin. And they made it so fresh with like fresh squeezed blood orange juice and the basil. And it was just delicious. So
wow.
if I had the ability, and I don't, to make that for myself, I would make that if that would be my cocktail of choice.
That is amazing. I never tried that. I mean, I definitely look forward to trying that. I'm learning a little bit more about cocktails now and trying to move away from the traditional rum and coke, which is what
Yeah.
I drink.
Well, that's pretty cool, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a iconic drink, isn't it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's the one that comes with you're born with that. Let's just put it that way. In Puerto Rico, yeah. But you know, guys like our good friend Tony Curdy, he has shown me a good Moscow Mule and things like that, which I'm
Those are
learning to
delicious
try
too.
them. Super good. So,
Yes.
anyways, Claire, I want everybody that listens to us, the thousands and thousands of people that listen to us, I want them to know who Clare DeNicola is, how did you became one of the biggest and most amazing women in the insurance industry across the country. In Spanish, we say, let's open el baúl de los recuerdos, which is let's open the trunk of your car and let's go down memory lane and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
So that's a tall order, one of the most important women in insurance. But I'll tell you kind of where insurance started for me and how I got into it. And as you said in my introduction, I started at Ivans. Prior to that, I had worked in public relations and communications for a variety of firms, including PricewaterhouseCoopers. I worked for an ad agency. And then I took a job with Ivans as the chief marketing officer. I don't even know if they titled it that way, but that was essentially the job. Come in and help us do marketing. And the person who hired me back then was the CEO of Ivans, who was Dan Carmichael, who went on to become the CEO of Ohio Casualty. And Dan was great. And I came in and I kind of started doing things at Ivans in the CMO capacity. A couple of years after that, they gave me responsibility for their sales group. So I moved from marketing into sales, and I had never run sales before, but I found I loved sales. I loved the idea of interfacing with customers and doing that whole job. I then ran a business unit. And then for the last 8 years I was there, I became CEO. And I'll talk a little bit about that, sort of how I made that jump. And was CEO for 8 years, then left to start my own company, the 10 Company, back with someone I had worked for back in the 90s. So I had worked for Gray Advertising, and my partner today, Valerie DiMaria, was president of GCI Group, which was within Gray Advertising.
Nice.
We started this business, the 10 Company, together. And when we started it, it was about 10 years ago now. So it feels like stuff moves so fast, but it feels like a long time. We bootstrapped it, did it ourselves. We didn't have a client at all to start with. We had to create all the business from day one and just start sort of pounding the pavement and trying to rustle up business and figure out how we were going to help these companies. And now we've been in business a little over 10 years. So
Amazing.
That's kind of my story. I mean, I'd say that I have a disposition toward communications and marketing and understanding the customer and being able to translate that into, okay, how can we help you? I definitely have a bias toward customer service and being out front with customers. And that's kind of translated through my whole history. If we go back a little further, it's kind of what I majored in, journalism and English in college.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to school in Pennsylvania, and then I went at night while I had my first job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, going for my MBA at Fordham University City.
Yeah, Fordham is dear to our heart because that's my wife's grandfather. He graduated from Fordham University back, and we're talking back in the, I don't know, 50s maybe. So all he would talk about is Fordham and everything. So it was very dear to his heart, and we stick with that. So as soon as I learned you study at Fordham, it's like, oh, she's awesome. People that come from Fordham, they're awesome. So
well, do you know what's even possibly more of a connection, and who knows, is Fordham was in my family as well. My father was a professor there, a sociology professor, back probably maybe when your wife's grandfather went there.
Wow.
So that would be kind of interesting, you know?
That would be super cool to find out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got to say, thank you for everything you do for the insurance industry. Thank you for everything you do for PIA and your involvement in the partnership. The first time I ever worked with you, it was impressive. I mean, what you do, how you communicate, how, you're able to sit down and the same with, Mike Becker and a team at PIA with all these different carriers and, some of the national ones are there too. And it's impressive. And I want to say thank you. And I want to talk a little bit more about your thought process and what goes around when you work with different insurance companies. What are you looking for? And, everything that you develop with them and the programs that makes, the 10 company unique.
Yeah. So first of all, it was great to meet. That's how you and I met. It's through the partnership at the very first meetings. And you're so warm and helpful in everything that we ever ask. Anything we ever ask, you're always, let me share this with you. Let me tell you how we do it. And that's tremendous. That's been phenomenal in creating programs. So, and you alluded to this. So the partnership creates programs for independent agents to be able to use. And when I say programs, they've done everything from like a winning at talent to winning at virtual to a agency perpetuation program. So, or we have one called Ready for Everything, which is about disaster and crisis planning. But the idea has always been with the partnership to make these programs useful, practical, something any agent of any size, anywhere in the country could pick up and find something in there that they can use. And so that's really important. So I think with the partnership and coming into it, and Mike Becker has been phenomenal as well. He's so great to work with.
He's just too good. I tell him all the time, you're just too good.
He really is a treat to work with. And Mike is tough. He certainly has high standards, but he really tries to bring out the best in you. And so I think that that's great. What I do with the partnership, you said something about everybody sort of checks their egos at the door and then comes into the meeting. And remember, we're trying to develop programs that are useful and helpful. So I find listening, I try to listen as much as I tell we're going to do this, but I try to listen and try to understand all the different needs and input because everybody's coming from a different place. And be able to then take that information and make it actionable after the meeting. And I do think that that's sort of what differentiates our company a bit is we're not just listening for listening's sake and sort of translating that. I've kind of walked in everybody's shoes, right? I've been in the C-suite of a technology company. I know what it takes to have to earn your living or make a profit. I run a small business currently, so I can apply that a bit to, running a smaller size agency perhaps. So I take all of that background and try to bring it together in, okay, what's the purpose for this? What are we trying to do? And now what are people telling me? And try to, again, make it something very real. So again, we're not just doing it for communication's sake, but making something that's real that hopefully people will use.
Which is one of the things I love the most is when you use the word listen, there's a difference between listening and hearing, right?
Right.
You actually listen. And like you just said, what impressed me the most is you ask for help or some type of guidance. And you literally go through everything like the same thing you did with me and you have done with others. Like, hey, talk to me about your onboarding process, your technology, and you evaluate everything. And then you have your own, talking points and opinions and comments regarding how to make that better. But then you go and you build something for all of us, for independent agents to benefit from that. And that's just impressive. I mean, I got to say, it's really good. It's really cool working with you in that.
Well, thank you. I learned what kind of as an add-on to what you're saying early on. I think it was the very first program we worked on for PIA partnership was, I think, winning at talent. And one of the things we did to start was I kind of walked into it. There was some stuff that had been developed. And I thought, all right, now we have to really talk to agencies, though, because we have kind of all these resources we'd like to use and categorize them, but I'd like to talk to some agencies. So Mike and his team gave me a list of maybe 10 or so agencies, and I started having these conversations. And what I could hear immediately was they were so different. It was like 10 unique businesses that I spoke to in how they approach things. I mean, there were some commonalities and I tried to draw those out, but there was so much uniqueness that I said, we have to really make sure we're designing something that is going to appeal to all these different people. They're at different stages of this. We did a thing. I think we did a little recording then of like recruiting if you're a rural agency, because it's so much different than if you're in an urban location.
Yep.
And there were different approaches and different ways to do it. Post-COVID, it's so different than when we did that first started this, which was pre-COVID, in terms of virtual and flexibility and other things. So I did learn that early on is you really have to figure out how to spread there's a broad brush here.
Yeah, and I want to basically to tie it up, and I want to bring back something that we mentioned at the beginning when I did the intro, which is also one of the great things and a huge shift we're seeing now in the insurance industry. And that's just the leadership and the role of the woman in the industry. Whereas for almost 100 years, it was a predominantly, and it's still predominantly a male industry, but you do a wonderful job of training and different things. And I want everybody to learn a little bit about that and why it's important to have the woman role in the industry, because I mean, we're all equal, right? And at the end of the day, there's so much value that we can have from everyone, from Hispanics or Latinos or, African American or whatever. But the role of the woman, it has changed the industry for the better, for sure.
So, when you asked me about the cocktail and I kind of told that story up front, we were coming from a training of, we had done a seminar called Women in Risk Taking. And we've done it for large companies, Fortune 500 companies. We've done it for big retailers. We've done it for banks. And in this case, we were doing it for women-owned pharmacy or female pharmacy owners. So they're all independents, kind of like independent agents in that respect. They go in and they own these pharmacies. So they're more like they're not the chains, they're the mom and pop pharmacy. Yep. So they have to, a lot of them are pharmacists, many of them are pharmacists to start. And then they have to decide they want to own a pharmacy and, where is it? And some of them own multiples. So we were doing this workshop on women in risk taking, which is something we started about maybe 4 years ago. My partner and I, we said, all right, we're both women. We've both been in business a long time. We think we could have something to add to this conversation. So we did a series of workshops for women. We call it Voices. We have a special website and everything that's about voices.
Nice.
It doesn't leave the men out though, because the men, everything we train is equally applicable to men or other groups, whatever group you want to assign to it. All of these tactics can be used pretty much for anybody. But the other thing is, and we try not to generalize because you can never fully generalize about a group, but there are certain qualities or I would say behaviors that have been internalized in some women that you want to guard against in terms of like communication styles. For instance, and I do this all the time. If I go into a meeting, I will often say, I'm going to be the record keeper for this meeting. That's a behavior. I just do it. And when I do it, it puts me maybe in a less of a role than the other people sitting around the table. If I'm the one taking notes, now I'm distributing the notes. If I let it, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but maybe think about what the power dynamics are in a room. Or we found there are certain ways people talk, right? Where they might have a new idea, but instead of just putting your new idea out there, you say, I'm not sure if any of you are going to like this idea, but now you've already sort of denigrated your idea before you even stated it. So there are things you can do to kind of make yourself, you sort of own your space. It could be physically, it could be how you talk, it could be how you act. That's one part of it. But then there's a whole other part of it, like just really understanding what you're good at. We call that like knowing what your superpowers are. And I happen to know my superpowers are being able to understand what a customer wants to buy and being able to then take that back inside my company and either turn it into a product or service or make it something or translate it to a board or whatever. Other people have different superpowers. So it's really getting a handle on that. That's what kind of this training is all about. And a lot of the Voices program is all about.
That's awesome. That is so good. And I love how you integrate kind of like a mindset into it, the type of mindset you should have, the way you should act. At the end of the day, if you have to be yourself, right?
Right.
And understand that. And I learned this many, many years ago. For example, when we talk about, I have a question, but it might be a stupid question. And
Oh, you can't
there's,
say
I
that.
know you can't do that. So and I tell people all the time, even when I teach insurance, when I'm speaking at a keynote or whatever, and they say, well, I have a question, but it might be a stupid question. I say, no, unless you know 100% sure the answer to that question, there's no stupid question.
Mhm.
So if you believe 2 + 2 = 5, you should raise your hand up and say it's 2 + 2 5, right?
Right.
But if you know 100% sure that 2 + 2 is 4, then you might not ask it. But still, if there's a little bit of doubt, you have to speak up. You have to ask the question. It doesn't matter what goes on in the room, right? And I learned this. And of course, when I joined PIA National, I was just a kid, 32, 33 years old. And now I'm just learning from all the mentors around. And one day I was brought up to the executive committee by our friend Pete Savino. And I sit all through the first meeting and I'm like, silent, and I'm quiet. Meeting is done. We have some sidebar conversations. We go out to the bar. Pete Savino comes to me and is like, I brought you to the executive table, to the executive committee as my special advisor because I respect you. I value your input. I value your opinion. You better speak up. So he kind of, they don't. I love them. So he kind of let me know you are here for a reason. You're not, less than anyone or something. You better speak up because you bring a lot to the table. And that was the first time I ever say, you know what? Now they got to basically slap me to shut up. But anyways, that was the first time. And it was a breaking moment for myself because like you mentioned, the example you give about you're taking notes or things like that, the way I was raised, and I know a lot of people are going to feel familiar with this, and you as well, when you own a business, you do everything. You are the owner, the boss, the secretary, the accountant, all that as you develop the business, right? And there's no shame or there's nothing wrong in doing that as long as you always know, right? Or remember that there's a lot of value you bring to the table and you are there for a reason. And they invited you for a reason, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And you're bringing up another thing that could, and you're absolutely making my point that this can be anybody, right? It doesn't always have to be a woman. You were probably the youngest person in a room full of, folks who had a lot more experience. So that can trigger, feelings of I am less than the rest of this group. Same thing happens to a lot of women. And it's funny because you think about different generations and that it's coming out of people's behaviors. But when my daughter was a freshman, she's since graduated college, but when she was a freshman in college, she made the honor roll and they sent a thing from the school that was it was like LinkedIn ready. You'd be proud of this because it was like marketing ready, like post your good news on LinkedIn. And I said to her, are you going to post your good news on LinkedIn? And she said, oh no, Mom, that'll be bragging. I can't do that. That's, embarrassing. And then about 2 or 3 days later, she went to her LinkedIn and could see that all these guys at her school had posted their good news on LinkedIn. And so she quickly went and did it. But it was almost ingrained in her behavior. Like, I don't want to brag. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to have the world see this accomplishment. So it's kind of interesting. Sometimes just being conscious of it can make you more aware, and then you can work against that, work for something instead. So
perfect. I love it. You're doing something awesome. And that's by the way, that's a great story. There's a huge movement in terms of marketing. And of course, you know more than me about this, about storytelling, right? And how do you telling a story? And that's why there's a lot of now, probably hundreds of thousands of ghostwriters across the world, because now everybody wants to share the story. And what happened to your daughter, it wasn't her bragging, right? But that's what she thought. And I would, by the way, I identify with her because I would have basically say the same words she said to you. I'll be like, Mom, no, I don't want to brag. It's about telling your story, and you should be proud of yourself because she got that by a lot of hard work and effort, which is, impressive. So the storytelling and the marketing has changed a lot. And I know you specifically follow this too. And it's because story not only sells, but story helps people feel empathy, helps people relate to each other. And this is the reason, by the way, we're doing the podcast. because I love sharing people's story. So, you bring a lot of value and knowledge, but your story is unique and everybody's story is different. So thank you for sharing that. That's
Oh,
amazing.
happy to. Yeah. I mean, it really resonated with me. We tell sometimes in our program, we tell women to keep a brag book. Just write down some of these things that are positive, even if it's just for you, but you might find places you can use it in the future,
That's awesome. I never heard of that. By the way, I'm going to write it down. And
You should write down your things.
I'm going to
Yes.
use
You're
it. I
going to go to
use
the training.
I will love to do the training. I go on my notes on my cell phone. I write down everything from my goals to because I have like 100 million thoughts a day, and everything that pops up that I know might be valuable. It could be sometimes even plans for 3 years from now. I go ahead and I write it down, and I make sure I don't forget about it. But I do not write or not the bragging things, but accomplishments. And I'm going to start doing that now. So thank you for telling me that.
Little hero stories for yourself.
Yes, they're
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
So let's turn it up a notch a little bit and let's go back to Ivan's and downloads and carriers. And I mean, how hard and not hard, right? How complicated and why has it taken so many years? And I know you've been out of Ivan's for 10 years now, but I mean, it's 2023. How is it possible that we still don't have every single carrier in America, in the country, downloading into Ivan's and then into our agency management system? I mean, can you talk to me a little bit about the process? And I mean, because I'm not even sure 50% of the companies download. So
Sure. Yes, I'll talk to you about a few things. One thing that is sort of a little known fact, it doesn't exist anymore because Ivan's has sort of been chopped up and sold. But when I was with Ivan's had three businesses. The biggest business was healthcare. And we did communications with doctors and hospitals and rehab facilities, all to process Medicare transactions. And that was like 60% of Ivan's business way back when. A smaller piece was the P&C version that exists today with the brand name Ivan's. And then there was a teeny little bit of business around the networking that we did networking for mostly retailers that we would help them before the internet was ubiquitous. We would connect up Dollar Tree stores and other kinds of stores. But then Ivan's was sold and the healthcare business got folded in. And then what exists today is the P&C business, which is essentially many things, right? The Ivan's today is many new things that it wasn't back when I was there. But the download still exists. And I work with Augie. In fact, we have a meeting later this afternoon to try to figure out how to get more folks using download. Yeah. A couple of theories on it. Back when I was there, a lot of it was the legacy technology that the carriers had, right? And those systems were like giant bears to change. And so making any change or add on took a lot of time, effort, people, money, right? Some of them, I assume, still exist, right, within the carriers. So they still have some of that. So it might be some of that. There's a lot of if you build it and they don't come, should we keep building it, right? So you have a core group of agencies using download, and then how do you get new ones? And then, frankly, it doesn't sound that sexy. Like when we try to help Augie with their communications and stuff, I'm like, it sounds like we're working on the same stuff for 20 years, right? It sounds boring. Like, how do we make it? So we were trying to play with things like it's not download. It's kind of the OG of all the technologies. It was the original digital technology. It was, right? It was people were able to exchange instead of a paper. They were able to get information right in their offices. So how do you make download cool? So we struggle with that. I don't have the answer for why everybody's not using it. It is useful. I think certain things happen. There are so many cooks in the kitchen. You've got carriers, you have the carrier systems providers, you have the agents, and then you have the agency system providers. And that thing follows a path through all those systems. And you have to make sure that everybody is adhering to standards and making it look just so. That is a challenge. That's always been the good and the bad about the industry, right? Yep. It's great, and a player can't just walk in and just poof, make things happen. But it's always been such a huge challenge.
Oh, that would be just a dream come true. And I know, and I speak again as an agency owner for the thousands and thousands of agency owners that, we lose so much time and money working on data, right? And
right.
in my case, in Puerto Rico, no carrier would do downloads. None.
Really?
So, oh no. So it was all manual. And believe it or not, in Florida, half of our carriers don't even download either. It's crazy. It's
That is
impressive.
crazy.
So
I
that's
did
what,
not realize that.
yeah. So then
Wow.
it was bad in terms of the all those data points that we have to fill out on our agency management system. And then that's why it took years and many years for senior, older veterans in the industry who would book a business of $2-3 million in revenue saying, no, we still use a spreadsheet. And I'm like, you what? No, in 2018, in 2020, I'm like, there's agency management systems and they're built for that, right? But even when you start working on an AMS, you don't have the carrier downloads. And the first time I ever saw a download was when I opened the Florida agency. And the first time I saw that my AMS had everything, like all the information from the client, all the information from the vehicles, the policy information, it was like my first download. It was like seeing the invention of light or something like that. It was crazy. I'm like, why can't everyone do this? And I
Yeah.
always wonder, and I never asked you this question actually before when we spent time together, but I always wanted to. So I'm glad I asked. And I agree with you. There's too many players going on,
That's
and
part of it. I think there have been various times, right, where the power dynamics shift, and agents really have a great dynamic right now with the companies. I mean, the business you're bringing in, and the relationship with the customers. And so I think it's more brass tacks, like agencies getting together in groups, potentially like Augie, or maybe it's PIA, bringing these groups together to be able to speak up and speak with one voice toward the carriers. I mean, Augie is definitely working on this and trying to figure out how to bring the voices.
And it's crazy because when you think about it, it's going to be for the better of everyone, but especially the consumer, which at the end of the day, that's
Right.
all we care about. It's the consumer. Right. And we tell people, and our clients all the time when they call us and they say, yeah, our premiums went up. They feel, betrayed by the insurance companies and things like that. We say, I know what you're feeling. My premium just went from $1,800 to $3,600. By the way, I don't only provide you with insurance solutions, I provide myself with insurance solutions. So I understand your pain. And one thing most, especially the national carriers, have done a wonderful job with their apps and their cell phone applications. And that has been game changing. But at the end of the day, there's a huge conversation out there on the independent agency channel towards the open APIs. And I'm not a techie guy and I don't want to get into that. But, why can't carriers open the API so everybody can communicate, so we can all work more comfortable or easier? Because at least I know thousands of agency owners do this. When you measure the cost of acquisition of a client, it can sometimes take 3 to 4 years of renewing that client. That's why book retention is crucial to actually make a profit on that client. Because the amount of time it takes, we measure everything from our lease, our power, our water bills, everything that comes into it, our E&O, our staff, our team, our system. You put all that into a bucket, and it's a simple formula. You can divide it by the amount of revenue you make and the amount of clients you have, and that's how you measure your cost of acquisition. I mean, it's a little bit more deeper than that, but something like having Ivans, and I know Ivans does a great job in this, but having more carriers join Ivans, like you say, should be a huge movement right now. It's brutal. It's tough.
Yeah, because it's a technology that works, right? You're not placing a bet on something that's an unknown. It's proven, and
that's all. Yep.
Yeah, that's
true. So Claire, tell me, what do you have next for the 10th company? You guys are doing such a good job.
Thanks. We are just really working on stuff and growing our business. Our heads down. It's a busy time of year for us, as probably most places, right? Where I don't know where January went, right?
I know, me neither.
So right now I'm doing a lot of work just at the 10 company. The thing we do is we kept it intentionally small. So my partner or I really work on every piece of business that we do. I love getting involved in areas that are not just straight up communications, but where I can kind of flex my abilities a little bit to help with strategy or, thinking something through. So I've done everything. I work with a lot of startups, mid-sized companies. I work with a lot of technology companies, really kind of helping them think about the next thing. It might go beyond marketing and think about sales. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're doing a lot of the same, although never feels the same. The difference between being in a company and being in an agency is, and I've kind of bounced on these different jobs over the years, is so when you're in an agency, you're working on so many different companies, right? You have to switch from business model to business type and all these things. And when you're in a company, you're focused more on one thing. And you know what? I love them both because I get to, sort of dabble in different things, but I get to, when I'm in a company, I get to really focus on growth and, all the things that come along.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Claire, I want to be very respectful of your time, but before we go, I got to ask you one fun fact, because this is Fun Insurance Solutions. Tell us something fun about yourself. People want to know, it doesn't have to be anything specific, something you do or you have done in the past that you consider to be fun. I did skydiving. That was my fun
fact. Wow. So I will not be doing skydiving ever. It's off my list. I won't be doing that. But if you're talking sort of bucket list stuff, all right, I want to share two. One is I'm a big animal advocate. Love animals, have been having them as pets, but rescuing them. And right now I have 3 dogs. I have a Chihuahua, I have a mid-sized mutt, about 50 pounds, and I have a big German Shepherd, about 100.
Oh, that's awesome.
So 3 sizes, 3 different personalities, and they're all rescues. And I've had them probably for the last 6 years. My sort of shorter one that's maybe a little along with your skydiving is I did kind of, I still stay in touch with my old sorority sisters from college, and
Nice.
we do some trips and things. And one of the trips we did was we went and camping, but it's called glamping. It's better than camping. And we stayed out on Governor's Island, New York, in these tents out there. And I was very brave and said, I'm going to go do it. But I want my own tent. And then in the middle of the night, I realized I was in New York City in a tent, just like zippers. And I'm kind of security conscious, insurance industry and all that, with zippers to get in. And I thought, I'm going to become a Law and Order episode. So I tried to stay awake as long as I could. And then I finally went to sleep. So I did glamp in the middle of New York City.
Wow. I didn't know they did that in the middle of New York City. That's impressive. That is impressive. That's awesome. So Claire, for the people that want to contact you and communicate with you, should they just go to your LinkedIn and
they can do my LinkedIn, connect with me there, send an email. I love to connect with people. If you're agencies, I'm always looking to talk to more agencies about the programs we're doing. So absolutely.
Awesome. Claire, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you.
Great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.